All right, so my name is Ruth DuBose. I'm the program manager for the Homeownership Capacity Program. We have a team of people here at Minnesota Housing working on this program, Kevin Knase, Cheryl Rice, and Tal Anderson. We'll go ahead today and get started with the PowerPoint, and then we'll spend just a couple minutes on that, and then we'll launch into looking at the application itself. All right, so as I said, we'll start with taking a look at the program design. We'll talk about the program process, reporting, and staff requirements, staff certification requirements. We'll talk about leverage and changes with HECAT and how this will interact with homeownership capacity. And then, like I said, we'll end with taking a look at the application itself. So just a few points to touch on regarding the program design, and noting too that this information is contained in the program concept as well. So eligible clients for the Homeownership Capacity Program. So that would include households that have a primary goal of home ownership and barriers to achieving home ownership that can be addressed in sufficient time to allow home purchase within 3 years. Adequate income or will achieve adequate income through the Homeownership Capacity Service, a willingness to commit to the time-intensive nature of the service, and agreement to complete the homebuyer education services once they are ready for purchase. Just a couple other notes on the program delivery requirements. So it is a requirement that anyone providing the service offer financial education and one-on-one coaching to all clients. Options for providing the service. So you could provide a one-on-one coaching session, and that can be either in person or by phone. In addition, if you only offer one-on-one coaching services, that's fine. You just have to explain through the application how you provide the educational services as well. You kind of think of this as, two separate ways of interacting with the client. So first, you're giving that baseline knowledge and education, and then the second piece of that is really working on that behavioral change and working alongside of the client in that. You could also provide your services through an educational setting, like a classroom, one-on-one again, or online. If the education is offered in a classroom setting or online, clients must also receive one-on-one coaching. So that is required, that even if you're educating in a classroom type of setting, that you provide those one-on-one services in addition to that. Now we'll take a look at the program process, reporting requirements, and the staff certification requirements. So first I want to take a couple minutes here to talk about the different phases that we've defined within the program. This is something, again, that you'll have to respond to in the application, so I kind of want to get you all in that mindset about these two different phases. So the first is prior to purchase. So this is really where the client is working on behavioral changes to remove those barriers to home ownership. The time frame that you'd be working with that client is probably anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. At the time that the client has decided that they will go ahead and pursue home ownership, that's considered prior to purchase complete. We'll talk a little bit more about that in detail. But then the client transitions into the post-purchase phase, which is where they will follow up with clients that have completed the prior to purchase services. So that as an agency, you'll be doing that with the client. And that could be anywhere up to 1 year after the client has completed work under that prior to purchase phase. So I want to talk just for a couple minutes too about reporting under the program and what this looks like at those different points in time in your interaction with the clients. So at a real high level, we ask for data on clients at intake on an annual basis through their prior to purchase interaction with your agency, again at program completion, which is that prior to purchase completion, and then an outcome, collecting outcome data and reporting that on that post-purchase phase. So the definition of prior to purchase intake is the coach determines that the client has barriers to homeownership and needs that intensive financial education and coaching services. This is also where the client, where you need to get commitment from the client to engage in that service. That is one thing that we do look at with the program, is agencies' engagement with clients and their ability to keep them engaged in that service over the long term. So items that are collected during this phase. So with intake data, of course, you're collecting client name, address, county. If the client is a first-generation home buyer, their banking status, other services received, and barriers to homeownership. Collecting some demographic data, so race and ethnicity, number of adults and children in the household, and the client's birth year. You're collecting some financial information, so you're completing a budget with the client, and as part of that, you're collecting rent, savings, household income, and AMI. And then you are expected to pull a credit report at intake. That is a soft pull. And you're at this phase, you're being asked to provide the credit score and then balances of collections and judgments, unsecured debts, including credit cards, student loans, and secured and auto loans. As you look at this list, you probably are thinking that a lot of this information are items that you already collect. So we're hoping that that's the case anyway, and that this would be an easy program to start being funded for if you're not already doing that, because again, a lot of these items you're already collecting, so that hopefully wouldn't be too difficult of a modification. So then again, the next step is collecting that annual data. So it's expected that the coach conducts follow-up with clients on a more frequent basis, but collecting actual client progress data annual from the date of intake and reporting that. Items that are collected, it's the same financial and credit information as it was at intake. And then prior to purchase complete. So this is really where the client and the coach determine that all the identified barriers to homeownership have been addressed, and the client is ready for referral to homebuyer education and counseling services. So again, the same financial and credit information is collected at that phase and reported on, and in addition to that, a survey is conducted. And that's really assessing the knowledge and behaviors specific to financial topics that were covered during that client's interaction with their coach. And then again, there's that post-purchase follow-up phase. So it's expected that the coach will continue to engage with the client through their home buying journey, and within that year, collecting an outcome for that client. And really, the three outcome buckets would be that the client has purchased, that the client has decided to not purchase and the reason for that, or that the client, even after that year, is still pursuing homeownership and the reasons that they're doing that. It's a short survey that we have developed. That survey is required for anyone providing this service, and that survey can be found on our website if you're interested in taking a look at that. So in terms of reporting, agencies are expected to enter client data on an ongoing basis in an online client management system that was developed by us here at Minnesota Housing. We'll say that we launched that probably within the last few months here, and we've received really positive feedback on its ease of use. Certainly there's a couple of glitches that we need to still work out, but for the most part, it's a really easy to use system that makes entering that data hopefully quite easy. We do look at that data on a monthly basis to assess progress against provider goals. So as you're thinking about frequency and entering data, especially if you're working from a paper file kind of system, we do look at that on a monthly basis, the data in the system, because disbursements are attached to progress against goals. One requirement that I just want to touch on here related to program staff is that it is required that you have at least one staff person be trained be certified or will receive their certification under the NeighborWorks America Financial Capability Certification. So we do ask that, again, you provide the certification information as part of the application. I just want to take a minute to talk a little bit more about that. There is a training, so if you don't have any staff that are currently certified, trainings are held. They'll be held in May here in Minneapolis, in August in Philadelphia, and in Washington, D.C. in December. NeighborWorks sometimes does offer scholarships for attendees. Any funds that are received under the Homeownership Capacity Program may be used for this training. So again, we're just looking to see if you don't have someone certified, that you do have plans to have them certified by June 2018. A couple things to think about with the NeighborWorks NTI. So the certification series for the financial capability is it's actually 3 classes, HO 208, HO 209, and HO 310, if you're looking for those on the NeighborWorks America website. HO 208 can be taken online. I would recommend going that route because the NeighborWorks NTIs are only 5 days, and HO 209 and HO 310 are combined 5 days training. So if you were to attend the training in May here in Minneapolis, by the end of that week you would have, if you took the online course beforehand, you would have completed all 3 of the courses required to then pursue your certification. In addition to the certification requirement, we do ask that agencies participate in trainings, conference calls, and one-on-one check-ins. This program is still considered a pilot, so there are more frequent check-ins with Minnesota Housing Program staff to discuss continued development. The input of the providers is relied upon to ensure the program reflects the clients it intends to serve. So now we'll move on and talk about leverage with the program. So just a couple of items to note here. So homeownership capacity funds cannot be the sole source of funding. Again, this is a pilot program, and like with many sources, the funding is uncertain if it will continue, of course, in years to come. So we want to make sure that this is not the sole source of funding holding up your program. We want to make sure that the clients that have entered your program will continue to be served, even if this funding source were to go away. One important change to notate is that the Homebuyer Education, Counseling, and Training, or HECAT funds, or other funding sources that contribute to the traditional homebuyer education and counseling services can now be used as leverage. We'll talk about those changes a little bit more in a minute, but that is a significant change for agencies to consider if you are receiving HECAT funding in terms of how you reflect leverage in the application. So now to talk just a couple minutes about HECAT. So the Minnesota Homeownership Center updated their standards guide to include long-term financial wellness services. So you will see that reflected in the HECAT application. HECAT applicants may now apply for any or all of the following service area or following program areas. So the 4 that are not bolded are ones that you would have applied for in the past. The one that is bolded, the one-on-one homebuyer services, financial wellness, is the additional service that is recognized under HECAT in this coming year. So the impact on homeownership capacity and HECAT, the benefits really to doing this is it allows the same client to be reflected in numbers under both homeownership capacity and HECAT. And agencies can now apply for funding from 2 different sources for financial capability / wellness services. Applications, there will be 2 separate applications as usual. So we'll still, the HECAT application will still be released following the homeownership capacity application as it has been in years past. One other change around funding decisions is that if an agency is selected to receive funding under both homeownership capacity and HECAT, awards will take into consideration funding for financial capability and wellness from both of those sources. The reason for that is because homeownership capacity funds are from Minnesota Housing, and HECAT, Minnesota Housing is one of the 4 co-funders that contributes to that pot of money. I know that this is a big change, so I just want to pause and make sure that there are no questions related to this, and just confirm that it is clear for everyone about the direction that this will take this year. Okay, no questions have come through. Of course, as always, if you do have any questions, as we go through the webinar, you can type your questions in the question box. Otherwise, if there's anything after today's webinar, you're always welcome to either email us or give us a call, and we'll have our contact information here at the end of the slide. So the question is, these changes only apply for this upcoming funding year, correct? And yes, that is correct. It does apply for the 17-18 funds under both homeownership capacity and HECAT. Okay, so before we take a look at the application, I just want to direct your attention to a few other resources that it's encouraged for you to look over before you apply or before you complete your application. So first of all, the program concept outlines eligible and ineligible uses of funds. You will be asked to complete a budget as part of the application process. The application guide includes application objectives, the due date and timeline, the application due date, as well as the overall timeline for when funding decisions will be made and when those will be announced, as well as submission instructions. And then the program outcomes that we're really measuring agencies against can be found in the Standards and Measures Guide, which again is also located on our website. If you've applied under homeownership capacity in the past, it's likely that you will notice that the application is, first of all, more streamlined, and secondly, there's more clarification in the application itself about responses and what we're looking for in the response. So hopefully this will be an easier application to complete than in years past. But in terms of the sections and the questions within the sections may have changed a little bit. The order of the sections may have changed, but in total, there's the same number of sections as there have been in past years. So we have administrator information that we ask. If you are proposing to partner with another organization, there's a separate section that we ask you to complete on that. Of course, we're going to ask for your funding request, your past production, and your outreach plan in Section 3. You'll have the experience working with diverse populations, and you'll detail that out in Section 4. Section 5 will talk about more of the Homeownership Capacity Program design. If you're a nonprofit, there are some additional documents that we ask you to submit around your agency financials. We'll talk more about that in detail, but if you're a nonprofit, then you'll have to complete that section as well, and then the signature section. So before I transition over, I just wanted to remind everyone of our email as well as our toll-free number. We have switched from using direct emails for Kevin, Cheryl, and I, as we have in the past, just because there are times that we're out of the office, and this way we can ensure that that you're receiving a response in a timely fashion, rather than having it sit in someone's email if they're out of the office for an extended period of time. So to find the application materials on our website, this is our home page, so www.mnhousing.gov. You'll click on Community Development, and then up here you'll click on Other Community Development Programs. You'll scroll down and you'll see the section on the Enhanced Financial Capacity Homeownership Initiative, or Homeownership Capacity. And then under the 2017-2018 applicants, there is the links for all the application materials as well as the submission instructions. So we'll take a look first at the application guide. Not going to read through this in its entirety, but I do want to point out a few sections that are of importance to highlight today. The first is the application due date and submission instructions. So all application materials must be received no later than 3 p.m. on Thursday, April 27th, 2017. You must submit all of the materials on the forms provided by Minnesota Housing to be considered for funding. We will not accept a partial or incomplete submission. Application materials submitted on forms that were not provided by Minnesota Housing for applicants applying under the 17-18 Homeownership Capacity Program year. Previous application documents and/or workbooks, or anything that's faxed, mailed, hand-delivered, or late. So you may remember in past years we would require you to provide a hard copy of the application as well as an electronic version. We've moved to just accepting documents electronically. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but we do have a specific email as well as links that we want you to use for submitting those documents. We'll talk a little bit more about the point structure as we get into the application itself. We will be making selections here in June. As I shared before, we will be waiting to look at homeownership capacity funding and HECAT funding side by side. So we'll be waiting to take this to our board and to make any notifications about the award decisions until late September, after our board has taken place in September. And then some of you may know this, but we are moving offices, and we will be in a new space effective September 1st. So we haven't officially set the kickoff event date. We need to get settled into our new space and learn a little bit more about what that will look like before we get that scheduled. But there will be an in-person kickoff event scheduled in the fall. And agreements will be mailed to recipients around the kickoff event date. So now let's take a look at the application itself. So one really important thing to point out here, you'll notice this enable editing at the top of the screen. You'll want to click that before you get started on anything in the application, and then you'll want to go ahead and save as, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later in terms of the naming convention. If you don't click enable editing and you start to enter the data through the application, you will not be able to save anything that you've entered. So it's really important that you enable editing before and save the document onto your desktop before you get started working in it. So this is the application for funding. There will be 3 documents that you need to submit to, or 3, I should say, packets that you'd need to submit to Minnesota Housing if you're a governmental entity, and 4 if you're a nonprofit. The application for funding is 1, and that's for all applicants. The workbook is the second one. That's for all applicants. The leverage documentation would be the 3rd, and that's again for all applicants. And then the 4th item would be the financial information from the nonprofits, if you're a nonprofit. So organization information. One thing I want to point out, and this would be only for agencies that are looking to partner with other organizations, is that if you are partnering with other organizations, you'd want to list the organization that will be named on the grant agreement in this number 1 here. So again, be thinking about that. Whoever will be named, or whichever organization is named, will be responsible for oversight of any of the partner organizations and passing through all of the requirements under homeownership capacity to those partner organizations. So be thoughtful about which organization would be listed here. Our contracts, or grant agreements, I should say, have changed slightly as we're learning more about the Office of Grants Management requirements. So here we're asking for the executive director information separate from the program manager. So we're asking that you indicate all the executive director information here. And then for the program manager, we recognize that the executive director, who ultimately is going to sign the agreement, is not always located at the same office as the program manager. So that's why we're asking for that information twice. If you do have the same address as your program manager, or excuse me, as your executive director, you just would check here if the address is the same as executive director, and then you don't need to complete the rest of this. For number 4, if awarded funds, indicate the location the grant agreement should be sent to. So we will send a hard copy of the grant agreement to whomever you select here. However, we will send email notification of when the grant agreements go out to both the executive director and the program manager. So even if you say you want it to come to the executive director, you as the program manager will receive notification that that is on its way, so you can alert your executive director to getting that signed and returned as quickly as possible. These next 2 questions are pretty straightforward, but we'll touch on them briefly. Region, of course, listing if it's greater Minnesota and or the 7-county metro area. Type of organization, if you're a governmental entity or if you're a nonprofit, and then providing both your federal and your state tax ID. If your organization is a new applicant, defined as never receiving funds under homeownership capacity, you'd want to click yes here. And then we do ask that you provide 2 professional references who can confirm that your organization has experience providing these intensive financial education and coaching services. Those contacts must be available by phone. So again, we're asking for the organization's name, the contact name and title, the phone number, and then what the relationship is with your organization. I want to scroll down here and show you at the end of the application, just talking about the nonprofits for a second. So section 6 here of the application, this is specific for nonprofits. So if you remember in question number 6 above in the administrator section, if you did click nonprofit, you will need to provide that additional documentation. Again, if you do not provide the requested documentation, your application will not be reviewed for funding. Again, as part of the Office of Grants Management requirements, we are required to do a review of all nonprofits' financials. We're defining nonprofit as an organization that has 501c3 status, which must be demonstrated as part of the application process. If the applicant organization is considered a nonprofit but does not have that status, they're not eligible to receive funds under this grant. So we are asking for the 501c3 certification with the IRS, the certificate of good standing, and then we are asking for some financial review or financial documentation. If your organization is requesting more, $25,000 or more from the Homeownership Capacity Program, again, we must perform that financial review. To be considered, you must submit one of the following, and this is based on your organization's annual income. So if your organization, keep in mind, because this is one mistake that happened quite a bit last year, when we say organization's annual income, that is for your entire organization. So that's not based on your program, and again, it's also not based on the amount that you're requesting to determine which documentation that you're going to submit. So if your organization's annual income is under $50,000, we are asking, or if your organization is not in existence for long enough to have completed the 990 or an audit, we ask for your most recent board-reviewed financial statements. If your organization's annual income is between $50,000 and $750,000, we are asking for the most recent IRS Form 990. And if it's over $750,000 in annual income, we're asking for the most recent certified financial audit. We do ask that you check the box for the documentation that you're submitting. And if that's the most recent available, or checking this box if it's the most recent documentation that you have available. If it's not, we do ask, so if your documentation is from 2015 or before, we ask you to indicate when the newest documentation will become available. If that is during that application process, we may circle back to you and ask for the most recent documentation. We'll go back up to the top of the application here. So we'll take a couple minutes here now to talk about if you're partnering with another organization. So if your organization is applying in partnership with another organization or organizations to provide these services, you will want to click yes. This means that your organization will receive the disbursements under homeownership capacity and pass those along to the partner organizations. So again, in how you respond in the application, questions 1 through 8 above, you're going to only include information about your organization, the one that will be named on the grant agreement. You're not going to include any of the partner organization information. But then in the remainder of the application, you will want to include the partner organization information as well as part of your response. So here in question 11, we are, let's scroll down then to the partner organization information section for a minute. So here you're going to be providing details for each of the partner organizations that are included as part of this application. So you're going to list all the names of the organizations here. Please provide us with a detailed description of the roles for each of the organizations in providing these services. You will have a funding request down here. That will be the total for not only the named organization on the grant agreement, but all partner organizations. So here you're going to be breaking that out. So if you're requesting $100,000 and the partner organization is going to receive $20,000, you're going to list out here the exact amount that, or the amount that they'll receive and how you arrived at that total. And then providing us here with a description of what your organization will do to provide oversight of that partner organization to ensure compliance with the grant agreement. Here you'll also want to make sure that that your responses include specific details of how oversight will be provided. So you'll want to include the frequency of the oversight, who will be in charge of doing it, and what will happen if you find that one of the partner organizations is not in compliance. And I want to back up here to this question for a minute. Be very clear here. So if your organization is providing coaching, but the partner organization is providing education only, make sure to clearly spell that out here about what exactly the roles will be for your organization as well as the partner organization. Now we'll scroll back up here. So picking back up at question 11 in the administrator section, here we're looking for just a little bit more information kind of from a high level about the differences between traditional homebuyer counseling and education and that of the more intensive financial education and coaching provided under homeownership capacity. So in 11A, describing how your organization, or how the education and coaching services provided by your organization are different from that of the traditional homebuyer counseling and education. You're going to talk or share a little bit more about your organization's experience providing financial empowerment education and coaching. Make sure to list the number of years of providing that service as well. Question 11C, ways that your organization ensures that staff are culturally competent. And then moving down to question 12, we're asking you to describe any other services offered by your organization or in conjunction with others in the community that would complement homeownership capacity services. So really you're thinking about down payment assistance, individual development accounts, employment services, lending circles, credit builder loans, anything that would complement the work of homeownership capacity and really support the clients that are coming into that program. And here in question 13, we're asking for you, if you're not already providing the intensive financial education coaching services, or if additional capacity is needed beyond the current staffing, describing how your organization will successfully implement the Homeownership Capacity Program. If your organization is already providing the service and or is not in need of additional capacity, you just would need to indicate that in the space below. Now I'm going to move on to section 3. So this section in total is worth 18 points. The application as a whole is worth 90 points. So this is 18 of the 90 points fall into this section here with the funding request, past production, and outreach. So here we'll be asking you to complete the funding request, so the dollar amount that you're requesting, the number of households that you'd be serving with this award, and then how long you anticipate clients to remain in your program. So again, thinking about this, if you're an applicant that's received funding before, this would be new clients that are entering your program. So what you're asking for here is to carry all of the clients that enter that program into your program within the program year. That funding should carry them through the entire time. So if you're awarded to receive or to serve 100 clients last year, and you're receiving, whatever the dollar amount was, for this next year, this is going to be for any new clients that are coming into your program. So if you've run out of money serving the clients from the year before, that can't be part of this proposal. Here we're asking you to identify the anticipated demographic that you'll be serving. So we're asking you to list out race and roughly the number served. So if you're proposing to serve 100 here, we're asking you to break down that 100 in this box here. We're asking you to identify the percentage roughly that would identify as Hispanic. We don't expect this to be an exact count because, of course, these are clients that you're anticipating to serve. But if you're expecting the clients that you have been serving, if you're expecting the demographic to be roughly the same, then that would be a good tool to use in determining the breakdown here. We do have an AMI chart here, and we're asking for, again, the distribution among the 4 different AMI categories. And again, this is what you are anticipating serving, what the distribution is among these 4 categories of the clients that you list up here in your proposed household served. So for past production, was your organization funded under the 16-17 Homeownership Capacity Program year? If the answer is no, then you'll skip the remainder of this section and go on to section D. If the answer is yes, then you will want to complete the remainder of this question. So first of all, you'll be using your grant agreement to list the number of households served, what that goal was listed in that 16-17 grant agreement. And here you're listing between October 1st, 2016 and March 31st, 2017, the number of households that you've served under the Homeownership Capacity Program. If it's more than half of the goal, then you don't need to complete this question here. Otherwise, if your production achieved does not meet half of the household number indicated in your request up here, or if your organization did not reach the identified goal in the grant agreement, then you'll want to respond, including what additional steps your organization will take to ensure that your goals are met. So this could be additional marketing, hiring of new staff, anything that you're indicating that you're going to be doing, be really specific about it. So if you're saying that you're going to institute a new marketing plan, include the details about target population, your marketing approach, things like that. And then this question on outreach, again, this is for all applicants. So here you're going to be describing your organization strategy for identifying and marketing the homeownership capacity services. This could include partnerships that your organization has established with other organizations to help identify and reach out to potential clients. So this could be referrals from local banks or credit unions as an example. You're going to describe how the plan is designed to specifically reach low-income renters and households of color or Hispanic ethnicity your organization anticipates serving, and how your organization is assured of the effectiveness of the plan. All right, so we'll move on here to the next section, which is experience working with diverse populations. This section is 22 points, for a possible 22 points. Letter A here, the financial empowerment, education, and coaching. So really we're looking at all clients that you've served with this type of service. So this section, of course, gives the reviewer a better understanding of your experience providing the service to all clients. So really what comes to mind here with this is financial opportunity centers. So they may have clients that are coming in with a variety of goals. So really you're including all of those clients in this section, in section A here. So here you're saying over the last 3 years, indicate the number of households that have received the intensive financial empowerment education and coaching service. And then of that number, you're providing the breakdown with the race and ethnicity. And again, this chart is very similar to the one as in your proposal. And then again, of those total clients that have been served, what's the distribution among the different AMI categories? And again, you'll want to use the chart to make sure that you're putting clients in those correct categories. Now, section B is looking at clients that had the goal of homeownership. So here you're going to represent only those households. So for question number 1, it could be, if you're a financial opportunity center, it could be a subset of the number that you provided here in question A1. If you're a homebuyer education and counseling agency, and maybe all the clients that you're working with all have the goal of homeownership, it may be the same number that you provided above. Here in question 2, we're asking for you to list the outcomes. So we didn't provide any drop-downs because there are a variety of outcomes, of course, but we are looking for you to provide outcomes specific to that of homeownership. So that could be purchase with a traditional mortgage, contract for deed, lease purchase. We're asking for the number that achieves that outcome, percentage of total clients, and then the length of time. Please do not use this section to include outcomes such as changes to credit score or debt, budgets established, things like that. Really keep this specific to homeownership outcomes. All right, so moving on here to section 5. So this is the bulk of the points. This section is worth a total of 38 points. Here you're going to be providing more detail around your program design. So in question 1, you're going to be providing a lot more detail about how you're determining if a client is homeownership capacity ready. So you're going to be providing your criteria and/or the selection process for identifying eligible clients that are likely to achieve homeownership within 3 years. Your response should include the intake and screening process for determining homeownership capacity ready clients, including if your organization has any income or credit thresholds, if clients self-select into your financial empowerment education and coaching program, how it's determined that the client will be able to purchase within the next 3 years, how the level of client commitment is determined, and how the different program options and expectations for participation in each are shared with the client. So it's really important that you're detailed in your response here and that you make sure to answer each of these bulleted items. And this is a little bit different. If you did apply last year, this section is a little bit different. We did ask a more pared down version of this question last year, and did realize that we wanted a little bit more information. So I would not suggest copying and pasting your answers from last year because you will lose points in this section as you won't have all of these items included in your response if you do that. So we'll take a look at the workbook here in a minute. There will be a workbook page specific for prior to purchase and detailing out what that service looks like. If you indicated in that workbook that one-on-one services will be provided, will these services be available by phone? So again, you're saying yes, no, or one-on-one services are not provided, so this is not applicable to you. If the answer is no, we ask that you do indicate why this method will not be utilized as part of the Homeownership Capacity Program design. So again, in an ideal world, clients will be able to meet with you one-on-one, but recognizing different schedules for clients, we want to make sure that clients do have access to contacting their coach in a different way if they need to. Second question is explaining why your organization or why the methods that your organization utilizes are most effective. So again, thinking about the methods of classroom versus one-on-one versus an online type of service. Why is that most effective for the populations that you serve? With this program, again, the only expectation or requirement is that you do provide one-on-one services, but we let you structure that, the educational piece, in any way that makes sense for the population that you serve. So we've heard from some agencies that classroom setting works much better than one-on-one, whereas other agencies say one-on-one is more effective for the population that they're serving. Excuse me, for the educational piece of the service. So really be thinking about that and why those methods are most effective. Here in question 3, you're describing how the coach will keep clients engaged in the prior to purchase services. So recognizing that this is a longer term service, clients may or may not wish to, or it may be more difficult for them to stay engaged over the longer period of time. And so what are the expectations of coaches in keeping those clients engaged in that service? And then finally, describing the role and responsibility of the coach and client under this service. So here you'll not only want to describe that, but if you have sort of any sort of a client agreement form, that they might have to sign, you'd want to include that as well. Post-purchase services, questions 1 through 4 are the same as they were under the pre-purchase services, except obviously specific to post-purchase. The only addition is question 5, which is once clients complete the prior to purchase services, describing how clients are made aware of the services available to them once they complete the prior to purchase services. So this, this would be an informational sheet, options reviewed verbally. We recognize that clients often, once they have purchased, will not be as engaged. So it's just really important that you're describing here how clients are made aware of the services that you do offer. We do require that agencies make available a budgeting session at a minimum after that client has purchased. So the final 12 points that we don't have here are going to be reflected in the budget and leverage section of the workbook. So we'll take a look at that now. So please make sure before you submit your workbook that you have completed all of the tabs. They start with staff certification and end at budget. So again, making sure that you have completed all the sections. If it's not completed, you will lose points on those tabs. So again, up here, this is the same reminder as it was for the workbook itself, but you'll want to click Enable Editing before you start entering anything in these worksheets. So staff certification, again, this is just the same reminder as we shared earlier in the presentation that we do require that the financial capability certification offered by NeighborWorks America, that is required for at least one staff person to have that or obtain that by June 2018. Please don't list any courses that have been taken toward the certification if the certification has yet to be received. Those courses can be listed over here under staff experience and education. So if you have a coach that's taken maybe 2 of the 3 courses for the financial capability certification, put those here. Only list certifications that have been received or will be received on this tab. And keep in mind, the staff certifications aren't just limited to the financial capability certification. If there are other applicable certifications to the work under homeownership capacity, you'll want to make sure to list those here. And one other note, the workbook should be set up so that when you enter your agency name up here, it should carry through into all of the subsequent tabs. Staff experience and education, I think this is pretty straightforward, but really we're saying, to list out each of the staff that will be working on the Homeownership Capacity Program, their title, languages spoken, if the staff person is bilingual, how long they've been providing financial education and coaching, and then any other relevant experience. So maybe they've been a realtor, lender, maybe they provided housing counseling and or education. You want to list all of that here. And then any of the relevant courses, who provided the service, or the training, excuse me, the date that was received and the number of hours. So moving on to the prior to purchase tab. This is restructured a little bit from last year. If you completed an application last year, this does look a little bit different. So we have the 3 different methods listed here. Here you will indicate if this method of service, if it will be provided, or if it's, excuse me, will this method of service be provided as part of the homeownership capacity services offered by your organization? So if you're an organization that provides education in a one-on-one setting, then you are going to list no to these other 2, and of course yes to the one-on-one services. If you're an organization that maybe has clients start in a classroom setting, so maybe you're doing some baseline education, and then that client is referred on for the one-on-one services, then you're going to provide, or you're going to answer yes to both classroom and one-on-one. If it's required or optional, you're going to list that. Again, that's going to be what agreement you have with the client to participate in that service. So required or optional for each of the 3 methods. If it's required, letting us know the number of hours of service that it's required for each client. If you have a curriculum that you use, providing the title of that, the number of years that you've been providing that service, and then any additional explanation or notes regarding the service. So this is especially important if you're applying with partner organizations to clarify roles of each partner among the different methods. In the bottom here, we've got a list of topics. Again, these are taken from the program concept and the application guide. And here you're going to list in the space below the subtopics that are covered. So I'd recommend you take a look at the program concept to make sure that your organization is in fact providing those subtopics as part of your education and coaching, and then listing anything else that you're also providing. The topics aren't necessarily limited to these, so if there are other topics that you're covering that aren't as part of this list, you're welcome to include those in the space below the preset list. And then here you're going to be putting an X to let us know how that's covered. So, you know, if you cover all of these topics, again, if you're the organization that's providing the services only in a one-on-one setting, both the education and the coaching, you'll put the X's in just this column. And maybe otherwise, if you're an organization that's starting clients off in a classroom setting and then moving them to one-on-one, where you might cover these topics in both ways, then you'll want to put X's in both columns. So moving on to the post-purchase service tab. Again, this is structured very much, or almost the same actually as the prior to purchase tab, so I won't spend too much time going through that. The only real difference here is that we've put a couple of topics here, and then in the space below you could list any other topics that would be covered as part of your service. All right, so moving on to service availability. So again, this chart should be pretty straightforward. Here you're going to list all of the counties that you provide your service in. And then here you're going to list if it's phone only, in person, or both. If you are a metro provider, please list each county separately. We do take each of the counties and do mapping as part of our board report. So it's really important that you list out each county separately to make sure that your agency's name is included as an agency that provides services to those to that county. The service availability piece, you know, this comes up quite a bit with our greater Minnesota agencies where they offer services over many counties, but maybe the in-person option isn't available in all of those counties. They might only offer phone only in certain counties. And then in the space below here, we do ask for you to provide the address or addresses where your services will be located. So even thinking about, you know, if you're renting out space in a school where maybe you're providing the service one day a month, make sure to include that in the space here. Providing the days and hours of availability, and then it's really important that you identify any special features. So if you've got walk-in hours, evening hours, on-call hours, make sure that you list those out here. So this budget and leverage instructions tab, nothing needs to be completed in this section by you as the applicant, but we do encourage you to read through this in great detail or spend some time looking at it, because it does have some important instructions about how you should be completing the leverage and budget tabs, as well as the leverage documentation that you should be providing. So we'll take a quick look at this now. So the time frame that you should be considering for the grant, or that you should be reflecting in the leverage and budget tab, would be October 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2018. The table should include the budget and leverage sources for serving clients with the goal of homeownership, receiving that financial empowerment, education, and coaching services only. So if your organization provides other non-related services, so maybe you provide that specific level of service, but for clients that maybe don't have that goal of homeownership, those the funds to serve those clients should not be included. Again, because we're a housing finance agency, and this is for clients that have the goal of homeownership, we want that to only be reflected in these charts. If your organization is serving or is proposing to partner with other organizations, you should only be submitting one budget and one set of leverage for all of for not only the named organization but also the partner organization. So you should not be submitting more than one budget. For leverage, so the supporting documentation. So if you're indicating that a source is committed, we are asking you to provide any of the following. So the signed funding agreement, a dated commitment letter from that funding source, corporate or foundation grant letter to specifically support your education and coaching program. So if part of it is earmarked for that service, please indicate that in the cover letter. Government or similar contracts, so just providing us with the page of the agreement that shows the language, scope of service, the term, rate of compensation, and the signature page. Please don't provide the entire contract. Those can be lengthy, and we want to make sure that the reviewers can easily locate what you're providing, or the supporting documentation to match up with your chart. If your organization is using general operating funds to support the financial empowerment, education, and coaching, including a signed letter on your organization's letterhead indicating the total amount of general operating support, the percentage that is applied to the financial empowerment, education, and coaching activities, and how that percentage is determined. So really overall, be thinking about whatever you've provided, whatever you've listed out in your leverage chart, that document, the total should match the documentation that you're providing. If it doesn't, making sure to put some notes on there about what the difference is, within the supporting documentation itself. For pending leverage, you're really just listing the amount and the anticipated commitment date in the workbook itself, and then for supporting documentation, you're going to be providing a signed cover letter indicating whether you've received this support in the past, how many years you've received this funding, and when you expect to receive funding from that source. And let's take a look at leverage. I think this is, again, pretty straightforward, but you're listing the source here. You've got a drop down for the different types of sources. You're going to list the amount here that will total in this cell below. You're going to provide the anticipated commitment date, the length of time receiving this funding source, and this is your checks and balance to make sure that you do include that documentation, and then any additional information that would be helpful. Committed, it's the same chart as it is for pending, with the exception of the anticipated commitment date isn't included in the space below. And again, the total for the committed leverage does show up here in this cell. And both the pending and the committed leverage amounts then will carry over into this chart here on the budget. So one thing that we noticed quite a few errors with last year was that the amounts listed here in this chart didn't always match what was listed in the leverage chart, and made it really difficult to figure out which was correct. So this year we hopefully made things easier by carrying over those amounts into the budget here. Here you'll be listing the amount that you've requested, so that's the amount that's listed in the application. And then this just gives you a percentage of total. So this is just kind of a checks and balance for you to make sure that you've listed your pending and committed leverage in the correct spots on that leverage worksheet. Last year in the application, we did have a separate tab for the FTE allocation. We have removed that, again, because that didn't always match up with the FTE that was listed here in the budget. So we've now consolidated that and just had you include that in one place, which will be here on the budget. So again, you're going to be listing the name of the staff person and their position, the amount for salaries and wages that you expect to, of homeownership capacity funds to go towards that, and then their FTE allocation. Here you're going to be listing each coach, educator, admin staff, and manager that is directly involved with your program. For admin staff, only include those who help with data entry or perform other tasks directly related to the program. You do not want to include accounting staff and or other administrative staff here in this section. And then in this section below, you'll be breaking down the total cost. Here, you will be able to add any additional costs if something is not listed up here. The sections that will, or the cells that will automatically calculate, they'll total up the income, the salaries, the other related expenses, and then it will do the calculation to show income less expense. You may still have a surplus here. Remember that clients may be served by your program for more than 1 year. So if you have a surplus, that isn't that won't work against you in the application. We're really looking, to see, do you have a plan in place to serve these clients beyond that first year, knowing that this is a more time-intensive program. And I should correct, so I said that there were 4 pieces of documentation to submit. There's actually, I had forgotten that with the nonprofit documentation, we did have that separated out rather than have it be one complete, just one submission. So this is your application checklist. So this is making sure that you have provided in your submission everything that you need to include. So again, you've got the application checklist. So that's this document here. We do ask that you follow these naming conventions. It's much easier for the reviewer to locate the documentation that they're looking for when you do follow these for your submission. And the application for funding, here's the naming convention for that. That's the Word document that we looked at to begin with. You've got the workbook, again, the naming convention for that, and then your leverage documentation. So we ask that you provide this as just one scan. So if you have 5 different sources of leverage, please do not list those out separately. Provide those as one scan and title them as leverage underscore and then your organization's name. And then if your organization is a nonprofit, we are asking that you provide your 501c3 certification with the IRS, as well as your certificate of good standing, and then the financial review documentation. So specifically, listing out what document you are providing. So the financial statement, the 990, or the financial audit. And again, we do ask that you complete this and submit it as part of your submission. So you've got your organization name up here, and then just the check boxes to make sure that everything's included. So now we'll take just a couple more minutes to look at how the information, or how you should be submitting your documentation. We do have these instructions with I totally lost my train of thought. With clips from each of the screenshots for your submission. So hopefully this will be pretty straightforward in your submission process. But up here we have the partner login information, or partner login link, I should say. And underneath that, you'll have the single family secure file exchange. So you'll want to click on that. That will take you to a page where you will have the option to provide or to complete a secure upload, so sending files to Minnesota Housing. For some reason, we have this issue with our system, but agencies don't typically have this problem, from what I understand. So we'll actually go back to the instructions so we can take a look at those final screenshots. Okay, so there was the secure upload option that we just clicked on. So then you'll be taken to another screen to enter the recipient email. So this is specifically sfupload.mhfa@state.mn.us. This is the only time that we use this is receiving the homeownership capacity and HECAT applications. So please don't send your applications to the homeownershipcapacity.mhfa email. Please only use this for the application upload. You'll be asked to enter your name and email address, confirming, of course, your email address. Enter the subject here, and then you can put any instructions that you have in the space below. Then at the bottom, you'll be asked to select the files to send. And then there will be a file listing. So this is where you would pull from your desktop each of the files. And then you can click upload and send, and then you should get a message. I do believe there's an option for you to click click to be notified once we download the documentation. I believe that is, yeah, it's up here under the select delivery options, notify me when the files have been downloaded. So with that, that's all that I have today. I just want to pause and see if there are any final questions. before we end the call today. And again, your lines are muted, so please put your questions in the question box. Give people just another half a minute here to enter any questions. So the question is, can you show us where to find the detailed submission instructions? So those are on the same, under the same homeownership capacity section, and it's just below the application materials. There's a link for the submission instructions here. And then to get to the actual page, it's up in the partner login information up here to get to the secure file exchange itself. The reason that we use this rather than email is because this allows for much larger size documents to be submitted as part of one email. I want to say our emails only accept like 20 megabytes, and the secure file exchange can accept something like 150 or 200. So it really does allow for, you know, especially with the financial audits, those are pretty large documents and usually are scanned. So that just makes the upload and submission process a lot easier. And you also get that notification then when we've downloaded the documents. So you've got that confirmation as well, which you wouldn't have if you were to just email. I don't see any other questions coming through, so I think we'll end the call now. Again, please don't hesitate to reach out to us either by email or by phone if you have any questions as you're going through the application, if you've got questions about the program requirements. Otherwise, we do ask that you email us and let us know if you do intend to apply. That's not a formal confirmation that you will apply, but it will help us to figure out roughly what we're going to need for reviewers. We are expecting more applications this year than we have in past years. So if you could do that by emailing us at that homeownershipcapacity.mhfa@state.mn.us, we greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a good day.